Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Parkway Drive, Darker Still, out September 9th on Epitaph Records. This album has 11 tracks, 46 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are an Australian metalcore band. The moment I started listening to this record, I realized that the design of the album was really interesting, because it's an album that has two sides of the same coin. Now, this is not really interesting on its own, but the approach that they took from a soundscape perspective and the impact that that has on the design is. The first half of the album is more direct, more linear, more balanced, more cohesive. The songs have more similarities than they have differences, and there's really no breaks in between them. So there's this sense of continuity that never really breaks or never really stops until you get to Darker Still. Darker Still is the title track and is the track that breaks the mold that divides this record. It's a ballad, it's a softer song, it brings the mood down. And you need that so you can reset your experience and you can reset your focus and your goals and your path. The second half that comes after is more volatile. You're going to get songs that push the boundaries of the sound of the band, that give you different experiences, that don't have as many things in common as they have things that really diverge them from one another. It's the second half of the album where you're going to be a little bit more forced to pay attention, to connect with it, and the songs come more from an individual point of view than they do from a collective. This takes nothing away from the overall playability, and it takes nothing away from the overall quality of the album. It's just the design, it's just the perception, it's just how you're going to digest the record. If you're going to listen to these songs individually, then this design really doesn't play any role whatsoever. If you're going to go from beginning to end, it's going to be interesting because you're going to get used to a certain sound, and then you're going to see that sound start to morph, change, evolve, and the experiences at the end of the record are easier to digest because of the familiarity that you had at the beginning. So I like how they put this album together, considering the songs that they had available to them. Best format possible. As far as the sound is concerned, the sound on this album is phenomenal. It doesn't matter if you like one song more than the other. It doesn't matter if you like one track based on the creativity of the track, on the influences of the track, on the genre that really drives the track. All of those things are subjective to the listener. But the quality of the sound, the quality of the songs is undeniable. The production on this record is through the roof. And I love the fact that they drove two elements into the forefront, two elements that become the cornerstones of the experience of this album. The vocals and the guitars. And this is not to say that bass and drums are not playing an important role and other elements that get added on don't play an important role, because they do, but you feel like the album is created around these very two important cornerstones, and then everything else derives from it. Like, you're going to see elements like electronic elements, almost industrial to a certain degree. You're going to see symphonic elements, all of this coming in that second half of the album. And all of them work really well in the context of the songs and in the context of where you are within the experience. But you can always go back to the vocals, you can always go back to the guitars and see how predominant they are in creating the force, in creating the intensity, creating the drive, creating the overall atmosphere and experience that this record gives. The guitar sound is phenomenal, the tone is incredible, the thickness that the sound has is very contagious. Not to say that every single song has the same thickness, has the same heaviness on the guitars, but every single song allows the guitars to feel predominant, to feel like they have such an important factor, such an important role, and they have this experience that becomes almost uniform without being completely uniform throughout the entire record. And I really enjoy that because they bring melody, they bring heaviness, but they always bring it with the same presentation or very close to it, and that allows you to gravitate to it and hold on to it. Easier to do in the first half of the record. In the second half, you almost need it in order for the songs to have some sort of connection between them and for you not to completely feel lost in the experience of listening to that part of the record. The other element of the sound that I want to mention outside of these two pillars of vocals and guitars is the drums, because I enjoy the drums on this album. I thought they had great quality, great sound, great experience, but they were slightly further back in the mix, which allowed them to still have an impact, but not take anything away from the two main focuses, from the two main drivers, which is, like I said, the guitars and vocals. But I really have to mention the drums because they played a very important secondary role. They grounded the album, they created a sense of foundation, and they were there to give substance when substance was lacking. So they don't necessarily jump into the forefront, but that doesn't mean that they don't have an important impact and positive impact on how the sound comes across. When the tracks are heavy, you feel the power of the drums without overpowering. And that's really important on a record like this that depends more or depends heavily on the guitars to be the key igniters of where you're going to go with it and where the sound is going to take you. Now, the vocals on this album are phenomenal. From the raspy delivery to the layers to the backing vocals to some of the electronic vocals that they added here, everything fit the style of the song and everything had its own place. They didn't take a one-size-fits-all approach from the first to the last track. Even in the first half of the album, where you have more consistency sound-wise, where you have more balance sound-wise, even in that half, the vocals are still very different from song to song. I mean, the differences are not, shattering, but there are differences, and those differences are important in order for the songs to work, because every track has its own fingerprint, every track has its own DNA, every track has its own message. So you have to adapt and you have to adjust the vocal performance and the vocal delivery to better suit those songs, to give those tracks everything that you can give and add value to the overall performance. And I really feel like you're going to get that throughout the entire record. You're going to get more melodic moments, you're going to get narrator moments, you're going to get some raspiness, you're going to get some heaviness, you're going to get some melody, you're going to get everything in that range, which is a very wide range of vocal styles and vocal deliveries that add incredible value, incredible energy to how this album comes across. I love the fact that they took some gambles, they took some risks. They went perhaps in some cases a little bit outside the box, but it works really well for an album that has this sort of design, that has this sort of sound. You see more of these challenges or more of these abilities to go outside the box out in the second half than you do in the first, but they're still there in the first. They're just a little bit more disguised by the more linear overall approach. When I look at this album, I have to say this album surprised me on a positive note. I wasn't necessarily a fan of all the singles, but the singles work in the context of the record. They will actually work better in the context of the record than they do on their own. And I think this is an album that's going to have that sort of feel, that sort of vibe. You're going to get more out of this album if you listen to it from beginning to end and then go outside of the box and start picking the songs that you like most and listen to those out of the context. They're going to be a lot stronger after you've gone through it and you've heard them in the overall design with the overall design in mind. So having said that, I must say this album was a lot better than I was expecting coming in. I was expecting this to be a soft record, to be a record that kind of treads water, and it's not. To me, this is a very, very, very strong Parkway Drive album. It has the more traditional, straightforward, heavy, melodic, catchy, hooky Parkway Drive sound in it, and then it has some different experiences with some different elements that really opens the door to what this band could do in the future. Really interesting album from that perspective, connects the old with the new. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Ground Zero. This is the opening track. The melody at the start of the song comes from like a music box, and then that melody becomes key. It becomes the key melody of the song. You're going to see it pop up in the chorus and becomes that igniter of the experience, and it's really the fingerprint of this track all around. It's an absolute banger of a song. I don't think you could open the album with a better track, both musically and vocally. It just has a lot of energy, has a lot of intensity. It's perhaps not super heavy, but it has great intensity to it. It actually reminds me of Vice Grip in a lot of different ways, musically and vocally, but there's a lot of elements in this song that, while sounding different from Vice Grip, when you're listening to it, you can see the resemblance between them. It's like two siblings, not two twins. Now, this is a track that has great backing vocals, has a great chorus. The chorus has so much volume, it's so explosive with that melody musically, and then with great vocals and backing vocals behind it to also make the song feel bigger across all the different parameters. It's just a really well put together song. It's a really incredible track, one that's memorable across every single piece of itself. Next, you have Like Napalm, really interesting song, a more energetic track. I mean, Ground Zero is energetic, but this one is even more energetic because I think it's slightly heavier. At least the heaviness is better defined, and you're better grasping how it impacts the song and how you perceive the song because it's more in the forefront. It doesn't have as much melody hiding it. It depends a lot more on the heaviness and thickness to drive the experience. It's a more linear track as well. It doesn't have the ebbs and flows as Ground Zero has between verses and chorus. This song feels more compact. What you get at the beginning is going to be what you're going to get all the way through. The chorus is still hooky. The chorus will still become tattooed in your brain because it has all the right elements from a lyrical point of view, from a tonality point of view, from a delivery point of view, from a musical point of view. So it has all the right attributes, but there's really not a lot of changes as far as the movement, as far as how you move through this song. This allows the track to feel also heavier than what it perhaps is, but it also brings the song together and allows the track to be very balanced from start all the way to the end. Last but not least, I picked this song because of how different it is. If a God Can Bleed. This is a super interesting track across everything, across the sound, across the atmosphere, and across the vocals and lyrical content. When you look at this song, you're going to see a track that comes under the 3-minute mark. So it's short, it's compact, but it's very dark. I would say this is the darker song on the album. That dark atmosphere is undeniable. You see it in the sound, you see it in the lyrics, you see it in the vocal performance, and then the overall atmosphere that those three elements create. It has a little bit of a southern twang, and the chorus is much different than the verses. The verses come across more as a narrator. You feel like you're listening to a story being told, a very dark and somber story being told, and then the chorus picks up a little bit more energy. It has a little bit of a brighter shine, and that's where that southern twang comes in, but it doesn't take away completely the darkness that really encapsulates this track. This difference in delivery, this difference in vocal delivery, in performance, in sound, in atmosphere, making it a dark song on this record really allows this track to stand out. Also, being under the 3-minute mark doesn't hurt because you don't necessarily want this experience being overextended because it would dilute the record, it would dilute the song itself, and it would take all the creativity away from it and make the song feel a little bit too much of a good thing. So I love the shortness that it has, and I love the condiments that it offers. This is at Parkway Drive, Darker Still, September 9th, Epitaph Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.